The tension in courtroom 4B thickens as Judge Hartford finally speaks his voice, carrying the weight of authority that comes with decades on the bench. His first words directed towards Sarah Thompson echo against the wood-paneled walls, while the mourning crowd leans forward slightly in their seats, drawn into the unfolding drama. Before them, the routine nature of a Monday morning docket call, transformed by the palpable anxiety emanating from the solitary figure standing at the podium. Sarah Thompson maintains her composure as Judge Hartford begins to review her case file. The subtle trembling of the papers in her hands, the only visible sign of her inner turmoil. The judge's reading glasses reflect the harsh fluorescent lighting as he scrutinizes the documents before him, his expression remaining carefully neutral, while the court reporter captures every word in swift mechanical precision, her fingers dancing across the keys with practiced efficiency. Through the tall courthouse windows, the sound of city traffic provides a distant urban soundtrack to the proceedings, while inside the courtroom the aging heating system continues its steady drone, creating an almost hypnotic backdrop to the formal proceedings. Deputy Clerk Martinez continues her efficient organization of the morning documents, her experienced eyes occasionally darting between the judge and Sarah Thompson, years of courthouse service having taught her to read the subtle signs of approaching storms. The gallery behind Sarah fills to capacity now with a mix of attorneys in sharp suits, clutching leather briefcases, and defendants in their Sunday best, all waiting their turn before the bench, while law students from the nearby university scribble notes in their legal pads, studying the procedural dance that unfolds before them. The morning light now fully illuminates the state seal, casting dramatic shadows across its embossed surface. Judge Hartford pauses in his review to remove his glasses, rubbing the bridge of his nose, a gesture that courthouse regulars recognize as a sign of either fatigue or impending scrutiny. The weight of his authority seems to press down on the courtroom like a physical presence, while Sarah Thompson adjusts her stance slightly, her sensible shoes shifting against the worn carpet beneath her feet, the folder in her hands now held so tightly her knuckles have begun to pale. Bailiff Rodriguez maintains his vigilant watch over the proceedings, his years of experience allowing him to sense the subtle shift in the courtroom's atmosphere as Judge Hartford prepares to address Sarah Thompson directly. The morning sun, now streaming through the windows, creates a natural spotlight on the podium where she stands, highlighting the dignified determination in her bearing despite the obvious signs of wear in her carefully chosen attire. The antique clock on the courtroom wall continues its steady march forward, its gentle ticking barely audible above the sound of shuffling papers and quiet whispers from the gallery, while Sarah Thompson stands perfectly still, now her eyes fixed on a point just above the judge's head, her breathing measured and controlled as she waits for him to begin the questioning that will determine the course of her immediate future. Through the courtroom windows, the city skyline rises against the morning sky, a testament to progress and possibility. While inside these walls, Sarah Thompson prepares to face judgment, her carefully organized documents representing hours of preparation and years of struggle, the weight of her circumstances evident in the slight sag of her shoulders, even as she maintains her dignified posture before the bench. The American flag in the corner stirs slightly in the draft from the heating vent, its stars and stripes a silent witness to the proceedings as Judge Hartford finally looks up from his papers, his expression unreadable as he prepares to address the woman standing before him. Deputy Clerk Martinez makes one final adjustment to the morning docket, her experienced hands sorting through the files with practiced efficiency, while the court reporter adjusts her position, ready to capture every word of the exchange that is about to begin. The morning light now fully illuminating the space between the bench and the podium where Sarah Thompson stands, creating an almost theatrical setting for the drama about to unfold in courtroom 4B of the Montgomery County Courthouse. The charges echo through courtroom 4B as Judge Hartford reads them aloud, his voice carrying the weight of routine as he details Sarah Thompson's history of unpaid fines, the morning light casting harsh shadows across his stern features, while he recites the amounts $3,000 in accumulated court costs from previous appearances spread across 5 years, the numbers hanging heavy in the air as Sarah Thompson stands perfectly still, her expression composed despite the gravity of her situation. Deputy Clerk Martinez continues her efficient documentation while sneaking glances at Sarah, her years of experience in the courthouse allowing her to recognize the subtle signs of someone struggling against overwhelming odds, the carefully maintained appearance that speaks of dignity in the face of hardship, while Judge Hartford continues his recitation, his fingers drumming in patient rhythm against the polished surface of his bench, the sound barely audible but filling the courtroom with a sense of mounting tension. The gallery remains unusually quiet, the regular Monday morning observers drawn into the unfolding drama as Sarah Thompson begins to explain her financial circumstances, her voice steady but tired as she describes working as a night shift custodian at the local hospital while also maintaining a day job as a part-time bookkeeper, the harsh fluorescent lights overhead highlighting the exhaustion etched into her features even as she maintains her professional demeanor. Judge Hartford maintains his stern expression, his years on the bench having hardened him against such explanations, while his fingers continue their rhythmic tapping against the wooden surface before him, the morning sun now fully illuminating the courtroom, creating stark contrast between light and shadow that seem to mirror the circumstances being laid bare before the court. Sarah Thompson continues her explanation, her words measured and careful as she details her efforts to support her teenage children. The assembled attorneys in the gallery exchange knowing glances, their experience in these halls having taught them to recognize the familiar pattern of financial hardship colliding with judicial authority, while Bailiff Rodriguez maintains his watchful presence, his expression softening slightly as Sarah describes the challenge of maintaining two jobs while trying to meet her court obligations, the morning traffic outside providing a distant reminder of the world continuing its routine beyond these walls. Sarah Thompson adjusts her stance slightly, her sensible shoes shifting against the worn carpet as she produces pay stubs and written records from her folder, the papers trembling almost imperceptibly in her hands as she presents evidence of her attempts to meet her financial obligations. Judge Hartford accepts the documents with practiced indifference, his eyes scanning the contents while his fingers maintain their steady drumming against the bench. Deputy Clerk Martinez accepts the documents, marking them as exhibits, while the court reporter captures every word of the exchange, her fingers moving swiftly across the keys as Sarah Thompson continues to explain how she allocates her limited income between rent, utilities, food for her children, and the minimum payments she manages to make toward her court fines, the morning light streaming through the tall windows, casting long shadows across the proceedings. The antique clock on the wall marks the passing time, its steady ticking providing a rhythm to Sarah Thompson's explanation, while Judge Hartford occasionally nods his understanding, seemingly unmoved by the detailed account of financial struggle before him. The atmosphere in courtroom 4B grows heavier with each passing moment as the reality of Sarah Thompson's circumstances becomes increasingly clear to all present. Through the windows, the city skyline stands as a testament to prosperity, while inside these walls, Sarah Thompson continues her careful explanation of working 60-hour weeks divided between her two jobs, her voice maintaining its dignity even as she describes the impossible mathematics of stretching her income to cover both basic necessities and court obligations. Judge Hartford reviews additional documentation, his expression remaining stern as the morning light catches the silver in his hair, creating an almost harsh halo effect. The American flag hangs silently in the corner, its presence a reminder of justice and equality, while Sarah Thompson concludes her explanation, her folder now considerably lighter as all her supporting documents rest on the judge's bench. The gallery remains attentive, sensing that this routine Monday morning hearing has somehow transformed into something more significant as Judge Hartford prepares to respond, his fingers finally stilling their impatient rhythm against the polished wood. Without lifting his gaze from the stack of documents before him, Judge Hartford begins his familiar lecture, the words flowing with practiced ease as he speaks about personal responsibility and the importance of meeting legal obligations, his voice carrying the weight of decades on the bench, while Sarah Thompson stands quietly at the podium, her hands now clasped together so tightly her knuckles have begun to whiten beneath her dark skin, the morning light casting long shadows across the worn courtroom floor. The additional $500 fine falls from his lips with practiced indifference, another number added to the mounting total, while the gallery shifts uncomfortably in their wooden benches, the regular courthouse observers recognizing the harsh reality of a system where fines beget more fines. Sarah Thompson maintains her composure, though a slight tremor passes through her shoulders as she absorbs this new financial burden, the fluorescent lights overhead seeming to grow harsher with each passing moment. Deputy Clerk Martinez pauses in her documentation, her experienced eyes catching the subtle signs of distress in Sarah Thompson's bearing, while Judge Hartford continues his monologue about the consequences of failing to meet court obligations, his words echoing off the wood-paneled walls of courtroom 4B, the morning sun now fully illuminating the space between the bench and the podium where Sarah stands, creating an almost theatrical spotlight effect. The assembled attorneys in the gallery exchange knowing glances, their legal pads forgotten as they watch the familiar scene unfold, some shifting uncomfortably in their seats as Judge Hartford elaborates on the importance of prioritizing legal financial obligations over other expenses, his voice carrying the tone of someone who has never had to choose between buying groceries and paying court fees, the ancient heating system providing a steady drone beneath his words. Sarah Thompson adjusts her stance slightly, her sensible shoes silent against the carpet as she maintains her dignified bearing despite the mounting pressure of the judge's lecture, his words washing over her like a tide while she focuses on a point just above his head, her breathing carefully controlled as she works to maintain her professional demeanor in the face of this new setback, the morning light catching the subtle gray at her temples, evidence of years of similar struggles. Bailiff Rodriguez maintains his position, his years of experience allowing him to recognize the tension building in the courtroom, while Judge Hartford continues his address, now touching on the consequences of continued non-payment, his stern expression unchanged as he outlines potential penalties, including the possibility of jail time. The American flag hanging silently in the corner, its presence a seemingly ironic witness to the proceedings. The court reporter captures every word, her fingers moving swiftly across the keys, while Sarah Thompson stands perfectly still, her carefully maintained composure showing only the slightest cracks as Judge Hartford adds notes to her file, the scratch of his pen against paper echoing in the unusually quiet courtroom, the morning traffic outside providing a distant reminder of the world continuing beyond these walls. Through the tall windows, the city's skyline rises against the morning sky, its towers gleaming with promise, while inside courtroom 4B, Sarah Thompson absorbs the weight of additional financial burden, her folder now clutched against her chest like a shield, while Judge Hartford concludes his lecture with a final warning about the importance of prompt payment, the gallery remaining unusually still as they witness this mundane yet profound moment of judicial routine. Deputy Clerk Martinez begins processing the new fine, her efficient movements belying her inner discomfort as she watches Sarah Thompson from the corner of her eye, while Judge Hartford prepares to move on to the next case on his docket, his fingers already reaching for another file, the morning light now creating long shadows that stretch across the courtroom floor like bars of judgment, the tension in the air thick enough to touch. The antique clock on the wall continues its steady march forward, its ticking barely audible above the sound of shuffling papers as Sarah Thompson prepares to accept her latest setback, the weight of the judge's words settling around her shoulders like a heavy cloak, while the assembled crowd watches in silence, their own cases temporarily forgotten in the face of this quietly dramatic moment unfolding before them. The pivotal moment arrives as Sarah Thompson begins her final statement, her voice carrying a new weight as she mentions her ongoing efforts with the federal Second Chance program, the words causing Judge Hartford's hand to freeze mid-motion, hovering above the final judgment form, while the morning light streams through the tall courthouse windows, illuminating the subtle shift in his expression as he finally looks directly at her face, the courtroom atmosphere transforming in that single moment of connection. Deputy Clerk Martinez pauses in her documentation, her experienced eyes catching the significance of this unexpected turn, while Judge Hartford slowly lowers his pen to the bench, his stern demeanor cracking slightly as he processes this new information, the gallery leaning forward collectively as if drawn by an invisible force, the usual Monday morning routine suddenly charged with unexpected possibility. Sarah Thompson stands straighter, now encouraged by the judge's sudden attention. The words federal criminal record expungement hang in the air between them, heavy with meaning, while Judge Hartford removes his reading glasses, his movements deliberate as he studies Sarah Thompson with new interest, the morning light catching the silver in his hair as he adjusts his position behind the bench, the sound of shuffling papers falling silent as the courtroom holds its collective breath. Sarah Thompson maintains eye contact now, her dignity fully evident in her unwavering gaze. Bailiff Rodriguez shifts slightly at his post, years of courthouse experience, allowing him to recognize the rare moments when justice takes an unexpected turn, while Judge Hartford begins to leaf through Sarah Thompson's file with renewed purpose, his fingers no longer drumming impatiently but moving with careful consideration through the documents before him, the American flag stirring gently in the corner as if awakening to witness this moment of transformation. The court reporter continues her diligent documentation while Sarah Thompson explains her involvement with various rehabilitation programs, her voice growing stronger as she outlines the steps she has taken toward redemption. Judge Hartford, listening with unprecedented attention, his expression softening almost imperceptibly as he absorbs the fuller picture of the woman standing before him, the morning light creating a natural spotlight where she stands, highlighting both her struggle and her determination. Through the tall windows, the city continues its Monday morning routine, unaware of the subtle shift occurring within these walls as Judge Hartford begins to ask questions, his tone notably different from his earlier lecture. Sarah Thompson responds with careful precision, her answers revealing a journey of transformation that transcends the simple matter of unpaid fines, the gallery remaining unusually still as they witness this unexpected turn of events. Deputy Clerk Martinez watches the exchange with growing interest, her years in the courthouse having taught her to recognize the rare moments when justice bends toward mercy. While Judge Hartford continues his inquiry, his questions becoming increasingly focused on Sarah Thompson's rehabilitation efforts, rather than her financial obligations, the morning light casting long shadows across the proceedings as if marking the boundary between past judgment and future possibility. The antique clock on the wall seems to slow its ticking as Sarah Thompson shares more details about her participation in community programs, her voice steady now as she describes her efforts to rebuild her life. Judge Hartford, nodding occasionally, his stern facade giving way to genuine interest, while the assembled attorneys in the gallery exchange meaningful glances, their own experiences with the system making them acutely aware of the rarity of such moments. Sarah Thompson maintains her composure, though hope begins to gleam in her eyes as Judge Hartford sets aside his final judgment form, reaching instead for a fresh sheet of paper, his movements deliberate and purposeful, while the morning sun continues to stream through the windows, illuminating the space between them where possibility now hangs like a tangible presence. The usual Monday morning routine transformed into something altogether different and unexpected. The heating system hums steadily in the background, while Sarah Thompson concludes her explanation, her carefully organized folder now open on the podium. As she references specific programs and achievements, Judge Hartford, leaning forward slightly in his chair, his attention fully focused on the woman before him, the gallery watching in respectful silence as they witness the moment when a routine case transforms into something more profound and promising. The courtroom falls into a deep silence as Sarah Thompson begins detailing her journey through the federal Second Chance program, her voice carrying the strength of someone who has faced their past with courage, while Judge Hartford listens with unprecedented attention, his earlier stern demeanor giving way to genuine interest as she explains the intensive rehabilitation courses she has completed over the past 5 years, her shoulders trembling slightly despite her steady voice. The morning light streams through the tall windows, illuminating Sarah Thompson as she describes the mandatory counseling sessions, financial management workshops, and community service requirements she has fulfilled while maintaining her 2 jobs, the gallery remaining unusually still as they absorb her story of determination. Deputy Clerk Martinez watching with visible empathy as Sarah produces certificates of completion from her carefully organized folder, each document representing another step toward redemption. Judge Hartford examines the certificates with careful consideration, his expression thoughtful as Sarah Thompson continues her explanation, detailing the monthly meetings with her program supervisor, the regular drug screenings, and the consistent employment requirements she has maintained without fail, the morning sun casting long shadows across the courtroom floor. As she speaks about the support group she now leads, helping others navigate the challenging path of rehabilitation. The assembled attorneys in the gallery listen with professional interest, some taking notes as Sarah Thompson outlines the federal expungement process she has initiated, her voice growing stronger as she describes the letters of recommendation she has gathered from employers, community leaders, and her program supervisors, while Judge Hartford reviews each document, his earlier impatience replaced by focused attention, the American flag hanging silently in the corner as witness to this moment of transformation. Sarah Thompson maintains her composure, though emotion threatens to break through as she speaks about her children watching her progress, their pride in her achievements becoming evident in her voice, while she explains how her participation in the program has impacted their lives. Judge Hartford, nodding occasionally, his pen moving across his legal pad as he makes notes, the morning light catching the slight tremor in her hands as she references another certificate. Bailiff Rodriguez stands at his post, his usual stoic expression softening slightly as Sarah Thompson describes the volunteer work she has undertaken at the local community center, teaching others about the importance of financial responsibility and legal compliance. The courtroom atmosphere charged with a different kind of tension now as her story of redemption unfolds before the assembled crowd, the heating system providing a steady backdrop to her words. The court reporter captures every word, her fingers moving swiftly across the keys, while Sarah Thompson explains the final requirements she must meet for expungement consideration, her voice steady despite the visible emotion in her eyes as she describes her vision for a future unencumbered by her past mistakes. Judge Hartford, listening intently, his earlier lecture about responsibility forgotten in the face of this compelling narrative of actual rehabilitation. Through the tall windows, the city skyline stands as a testament to possibility while Sarah Thompson concludes her explanation. Her carefully maintained composure finally showing cracks as she describes the impact her criminal record has had on her employment opportunities. The morning light illuminating the tears, she quickly blinks away while maintaining her dignified bearing. Judge Hartford, watching with newfound respect as she demonstrates the very responsibility he had earlier preached about. Deputy Clerk Martinez organizes the growing stack of supporting documents, her experienced hands moving with care as she processes each certificate and letter, while Sarah Thompson responds to Judge Hartford's follow-up questions, her answers revealing a deep understanding of her past mistakes and a genuine commitment to transformation. The gallery remaining engaged as they witness this unexpected display of judicial interest in what had started as a routine fine collection case. The antique clock on the wall marks the passing time, its steady ticking providing a rhythm to Sarah Thompson's words as she shares her hopes for future employment opportunities. Once her record is expunged, her voice carrying both strength and vulnerability, while Judge Hartford continues to take notes, his earlier dismissive attitude completely transformed by the evidence of genuine rehabilitation before him, the morning light creating patterns of possibility across the worn courtroom floor. Judge Hartford removes his glasses with deliberate care, placing them on the bench before him as he begins to inquire about Sarah Thompson's original federal case, his voice carrying a new tone of genuine interest, while she stands straighter at the podium preparing to share the story that had set her current journey in motion. The morning light streaming through the tall windows, casting long shadows across the courtroom as she begins her explanation. The details of her past emerge with careful honesty as Sarah Thompson describes the desperate circumstances that led to her attempt to cash a fraudulent check 20 years ago, her voice steady despite the weight of the memory while she explains how she had found herself homeless with infant twins depending on her for survival. Judge Hartford, listening intently as she recounts the moment of desperation that had altered the course of her life, the gallery remaining silent as her story unfolds. Deputy Clerk Martinez pauses in her documentation, watching as Sarah Thompson describes the small check-cashing establishment on the city's east side where she had presented a check she knew wasn't real, her voice catching slightly as she recalls the immediate regret that had followed her twins sleeping in their donated stroller outside, while she made a decision that would haunt her for decades. Judge Hartford, leaning forward slightly, his expression thoughtful as he absorbs the human story behind the criminal record. The morning light illuminates Sarah Thompson's face as she continues her narrative, explaining how she had been living in her car for 3 months prior to the incident, working temporary jobs while trying to secure stable housing for her babies, the sound of the heating system providing a steady backdrop to her words, while Judge Hartford asks careful questions about the circumstances that had led to her homelessness, the American flag hanging silently in the corner as her story of struggle echoes through the courtroom. Bailiff Rodriguez maintains his professional stance, though his expression softens as Sarah Thompson describes the moment of her arrest, the terror of wondering what would happen to her children while she was processed through the system. Judge Hartford, listening with unprecedented attention as she explains how her grandmother had taken custody of the twins during her 18-month incarceration, the gallery watching in respectful silence as this routine fine collection case transforms into something more profound. The court reporter captures every word, her fingers moving swiftly across the keys as Sarah Thompson describes her release from federal prison and the immediate challenge of finding employment with a criminal record, her voice growing stronger as she explains how this obstacle had fueled her determination to create a different future. Judge Hartford, nodding thoughtfully while she outlines the steps she had taken to rebuild her life, the morning sun casting patterns of light and shadow across the proceedings. Through the tall windows, the city continues its Monday morning routine, while inside courtroom 4B, Sarah Thompson reveals how she had secured her first post-release job as a night janitor, working her way through community college classes during the day, her twins becoming her motivation to persist despite the constant barriers her record created. Judge Hartford, making notes as she describes her gradual progression towards stability, the gallery remaining unusually engaged in this unexpected revelation of human resilience. Deputy Clerk Martinez organizes the growing collection of documents that support Sarah Thompson's narrative, while she explains how she had discovered the federal Second Chance program through a fellow church member, her voice carrying both gratitude and determination as she describes her initial application process. Judge Hartford, reviewing the paperwork with new understanding, his earlier stern demeanor completely transformed by the context now surrounding the unpaid fines before him. The antique clock continues its steady marking of time while Sarah Thompson concludes the story of her federal case, her dignity evident in every careful word, as she describes how her past mistake had become the catalyst for her commitment to rehabilitation. Judge Hartford, asking thoughtful follow-up questions, his interest genuine as he seeks to understand the full scope of her journey. The morning light seeming to create a spotlight where she stands, illuminating both her past struggles and present determination. Sarah Thompson maintains her composure, though emotion edges her voice, as she describes how her twins, now teenagers, have never missed honor roll despite the family's financial challenges. Judge Hartford, listening intently as she explains how her determination to provide them with a better future has driven every decision since her release. The courtroom atmosphere charged with understanding as the human story behind the case file becomes clear to all present. Judge Hartford leans forward with growing interest as he learns about Sarah Thompson's educational achievements, her voice carrying quiet pride as she describes earning her associate's degree in accounting through night classes at the local community college, while maintaining her full-time custodial position. The morning light streaming through the tall windows, illuminating the stack of transcripts and certificates she presents as evidence of her transformation. The courtroom remains attentively silent as Sarah Thompson explains her current role as a part-time bookkeeper at a small local business, her employer having taken a chance on her despite her record after witnessing her dedication to her studies. Judge Hartford, reviewing the letter of recommendation from her employer that speaks of her meticulous attention to detail and unwavering integrity, the gallery watching as the story of genuine rehabilitation unfolds before them. Deputy Clerk Martinez arranges the new documents with care while Sarah Thompson describes her volunteer work teaching financial literacy classes at the community center, her voice growing stronger as she explains how she uses her own experience to help others avoid the desperate decisions that had altered her path. Judge Hartford, nodding with appreciation as she outlines the curriculum she developed, combining practical skills with personal responsibility. The morning sun casts long shadows across the courtroom floor as Sarah Thompson details her monthly budget, explaining how she allocates her limited resources between supporting her children, maintaining stable housing, and attempting to meet her core obligations. Judge Hartford, listening intently as she describes the careful financial planning that allows her to provide school supplies and educational opportunities for her twins despite their economic challenges. Bailiff Rodriguez stands at his post, his expression softening as Sarah Thompson shares how her students at the community center often arrive feeling hopeless about their financial situations, but leave with practical tools and renewed hope, her voice carrying the weight of personal experience as she describes the importance of second chances. Judge Hartford making notes as she explains the ripple effect of her volunteer work in the community. The court reporter continues her diligent documentation while Sarah Thompson presents evidence of her commitment to ongoing education, showing certificates from advanced bookkeeping courses and professional development workshops, her determination to improve her employment prospects evident in every credential. Judge Hartford, examining each document with growing respect as the full scope of her efforts becomes clear. Through the tall windows, the city skyline serves as a backdrop to Sarah Thompson's explanation of her 5-year plan, including her goal to complete a bachelor's degree in business administration, her voice steady as she describes the scholarship applications and financial aid forms she completes between her 2 jobs. Judge Hartford, watching thoughtfully as she outlines her strategy for advancing despite the limitations of her record. The assembled attorneys in the gallery listen with professional interest as Sarah Thompson describes her networking efforts within the local business community, her voice carrying hope as she explains how some employers have begun to look beyond her record to see her qualifications. Judge Hartford, reviewing the letters of reference that speak to her character and work ethic, the morning light seeming to brighten as her story of persistence unfolds. Deputy Clerk Martinez watches with visible empathy as Sarah Thompson shares her dream of eventually opening a small bookkeeping service to provide opportunities for others facing similar barriers, her voice trembling slightly as she describes how her twins have begun helping her prepare business plans. Judge Hartford, noting the practical steps she has taken toward this goal despite her current circumstances. The antique clock marks the passing time while Sarah Thompson concludes her presentation with a detailed explanation of how expungement would impact her employment prospects, her words carrying the weight of 20 years of working to overcome a single desperate decision. Judge Hartford, absorbing the full narrative of reformation and resilience that stands in stark contrast to the routine fine collection case he had expected to handle this Monday morning. In an unexpected shift that causes a ripple of murmurs through the gallery, Judge Hartford sets aside his gavel and legal pad, leaning forward with an expression of decisive purpose as he not only dismisses Sarah Thompson's current fines, but also reaches for his personal letterhead to begin composing a letter of support for her federal expungement petition, the morning light streaming through the tall windows illuminating the profound transformation occurring in courtroom 4B. Sarah Thompson stands perfectly still at the podium, her composure wavering slightly as she processes this unexpected turn of events, while Judge Hartford begins to dictate his letter to Deputy Clerk Martinez, his words painting a compelling picture of rehabilitation and redemption that draws from the evidence and testimony presented before him, the gallery watching in respectful silence as justice bends toward mercy on this ordinary Monday morning. The court reporter captures every word as Judge Hartford cites Sarah Thompson's remarkable journey, emphasizing her commitment to education, her dedication to community service, and her unwavering responsibility to her children. Despite overwhelming obstacles, his voice carrying conviction as he recommends her case for expungement consideration, the morning sun casting long shadows across the proceedings as if marking the boundary between past and future. Deputy Clerk Martinez types with practiced efficiency, though her eyes occasionally dart towards Sarah Thompson, catching the subtle tremor in her shoulders as Judge Hartford continues his endorsement, detailing her professional achievements, volunteer work, and concrete steps toward rehabilitation, the American flag stirring gently in the corner, as if acknowledging this moment of justice aligning with mercy. Judge Hartford pauses in his dictation to address Sarah Thompson directly, his earlier stern demeanor completely transformed as he commends her determination and resilience, his words carrying the weight of 27 years on the bench as he acknowledges the true meaning of rehabilitation, the gallery remaining unusually still as they witness this rare moment of judicial compassion. Through the tall windows, the city continues its routine, while inside courtroom 4B, Sarah Thompson listens with quiet dignity as Judge Hartford outlines his plan to advocate for expungement reform in the county court system, his voice carrying conviction as he describes how cases like hers illuminate the need for systemic change, the morning light seeming to brighten as hope replaces resignation in the atmosphere. Bailiff Rodriguez maintains his professional stance, though his expression softens as Judge Hartford instructs Deputy Clerk Martinez to prepare additional documentation supporting Sarah Thompson's federal petition, his dedication to her case extending beyond the boundaries of their brief courtroom encounter, the heating system providing a steady backdrop to this unexpected demonstration of judicial support. The assembled attorneys in the gallery exchange meaningful glances as Judge Hartford continues his dictation, their own perspectives on the justice system shifting as they witness his transformation from stern arbitrator to passionate advocate, the morning light catching the silver in his hair as he emphasizes Sarah Thompson's potential contributions to society once freed from the burden of her past. Sarah Thompson maintains her composure, though tears begin to well in her eyes as Judge Hartford concludes his letter with a powerful statement about the importance of second chances, his words echoing through the courtroom as he signs the document with deliberate care, the gallery watching in appreciation as this routine Monday morning docket transforms into a testament to possibility. The antique clock marks this pivotal moment while Deputy Clerk Martinez prepares the final documentation, her efficient movements accompanied by an encouraging smile as Judge Hartford arranges for copies of all supporting materials to be sent to the federal court, his commitment to Sarah Thompson's case extending beyond mere dismissal of fines to active advocacy for her future, the morning light creating patterns of hope across the worn courtroom floor. The early autumn sunlight streams through the tall windows of courtroom 4B as Sarah Thompson returns 1 month later, her appearance notably lighter as she approaches the same podium where her story had unfolded that transformative Monday morning. Judge Hartford, looking up from his current caseload with immediate recognition, his stern judicial demeanor softening as she stands before him once again, this time carrying a small envelope rather than a folder of unpaid fines. Deputy Clerk Martinez smiles warmly as Sarah Thompson requests a moment of the court's time, her voice steady and clear as she expresses her gratitude not only for the dismissal of her fines, but for Judge Hartford's unprecedented support of her expungement petition, the morning light catching the hopeful gleam in her eyes while she shares the preliminary response from the federal court indicating positive movement in her case. The gallery, filled with the usual Monday morning crowd, falls silent as Judge Hartford sets aside his current documents to give Sarah Thompson his full attention, his transformation from stern adjudicator to advocate for reform evident in the way he leans forward with genuine interest, while she describes how his letter of support has already influenced other judges in neighboring counties to review similar cases with renewed perspective. Through the tall windows, the city's skyline stands as a testament to possibility, while Sarah Thompson explains how Judge Hartford's advocacy has sparked a conversation about expungement reform within the county court system. His recent presentation to the Judicial Review Board, inspiring a committee to examine policies that perpetuate cycles of financial hardship, the morning light illuminating both their faces as they discuss the ripple effects of that pivotal day. Bailiff Rodriguez watches from his post as Judge Hartford shares his own update describing the dozen similar cases he has identified since their last meeting, his voice carrying conviction as he outlines his developing proposal for a county-wide program to support rehabilitation and expungement, the American flag hanging proudly in the corner as the principles of justice and mercy align in this unexpected partnership. The court reporter captures every word as Sarah Thompson reveals that her twins, now high school seniors, have begun researching law schools inspired by witnessing the power of judicial compassion in action. Judge Hartford, listening with visible satisfaction as she describes how her story has become a source of hope for her financial literacy students at the community center, the morning light casting long shadows of possibility across the courtroom floor. Deputy Clerk Martinez arranges a new stack of documents as Judge Hartford presents Sarah Thompson with copies of the formal recommendations he has submitted to the State Judicial Committee, his advocacy extending beyond her individual case to address systemic barriers facing reformed individuals, the gallery watching with interest as this follow-up meeting demonstrates the lasting impact of their original encounter. The antique clock marks the passing time while Sarah Thompson shares news of a full-time bookkeeping position offered by a local business owner who had attended Judge Hartford's presentation on expungement reform, her voice carrying quiet pride as she describes how her new employer values her experience and expertise, rather than judging her past, the morning sun seeming to brighten as she outlines her expanded role in community rehabilitation programs. Judge Hartford removes his glasses as he listens to Sarah Thompson describe the support group she has established for others navigating the expungement process, his earlier skepticism about rehabilitation completely transformed by the evidence of genuine change before him, the heating system humming softly in the background as they discuss the importance of creating pathways to redemption within the justice system. The assembled attorneys in the gallery pay careful attention as Judge Hartford shares his vision for a more equitable approach to court fines and rehabilitation, his words carrying the weight of experience as he describes how Sarah Thompson's case has reshaped his understanding of justice, the morning light streaming through the windows illuminating this moment of continued transformation in courtroom 4B, where a routine fine collection case had sparked a movement toward meaningful reform.